Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow morning. You check your phone. No notifications. No messages. No missed calls. You walk outside. The streets are empty. No conversations. No footsteps. No distant laughter. No sound except the wind. At first, it feels strange. Then confusing. Then terrifying. Days pass. Weeks pass. Months pass. You never speak to another human being again. No eye contact. No touch. No interaction, just silence. Most people assume loneliness is merely an emotion, a temporary feeling, something uncomfortable but harmless. But science tells a very different story. Because the human brain wasn't designed to exist alone. And when social contact disappears completely, something begins happening inside your mind. Something that can slowly change the way you think, the way you feel, and eventually, the way you experience reality itself. Tonight we're exploring one of the M. To understand isolation, we first need to understand ourselves. For over 300,000 years, humans survived through groups. Our ancestors hunted together, slept together, protected one another. A lone human was vulnerable. A tribe survived. This survival pressure became deeply embedded into our biology. Your brain evolved to constantly monitor social connections. In fact, modern brain scans reveal something fascinating. The same regions activated by physical pain can also activate during social rejection. In other words, your brain can treat loneliness almost like an injury. Think about that. The feeling of being excluded isn't merely emotional. Your brain interprets it as a potential threat to survival. Thousands of years ago, that interpretation made perfect sense. Being abandoned often meant death. But here's the problem. Your brain still carries those ancient survival systems today. And when complete isolation begins, those systems don't simply switch off, they become louder, much louder. The first stage of isolation is surprisingly subtle. Most people imagine immediate panic. But that's not usually what happens. Initially, many people actually enjoy being alone. No obligations, no conflicts, no social pressure. For a brief period, the silence can even feel relaxing. But beneath the surface, changes are already beginning. Stress hormones start increasing. Sleep quality declines, the brain becomes hypervigilant. Small concerns begin feeling larger than they actually are. Without realizing it, you become more sensitive to uncertainty, more sensitive to fear, more sensitive to negative thoughts, and then something interesting happens. Your mind begins searching desperately for stimulation. You replay old conversations, remember embarrassing moments from years ago, imagine future scenarios, argue with imaginary people. Anything to fill the silence. Because silence is becoming harder to tolerate, and this is only the beginning. After several weeks, the effects become more noticeable. Humans naturally use other people as mirrors. Conversations help us organize thoughts. Friends help challenge our beliefs. Interactions help keep our perception grounded. Remove those interactions, and the mind slowly loses an important reference point. Thoughts begin circling endlessly. A single worry becomes an obsession. A small fear becomes a larger fear. Without outside feedback, the brain starts creating its own reality loops. Many isolated individuals report becoming trapped inside repetitive thinking. The same memories, the same worries, the same imagined scenarios, again, and again, and again. It's almost as if the mind becomes a room with no windows. Eventually, you're no longer observing your thoughts. You're living inside them. Now let's look at what happens when isolation becomes extreme. For centuries, solitary confinement has been used in prisons around the world. The idea seemed simple. Separate a prisoner from society, leave them alone, force them to reflect. But the results shocked researchers. many prisoners experienced severe psychological deterioration. Some lost track of time completely. Others developed intense anxiety. Many reported hearing voices, seeing shapes moving in empty rooms, feeling invisible presences nearby. Some became paranoid. Others became emotionally numb. A few experienced complete mental breakdowns. One prisoner described solitary confinement as a slow-motion destruction of the self. Think about that. Not physical torture, not violence, just isolation, and yet the damage was profound. Because the human mind craves connection far more than we realize. Here's where things become truly disturbing. The brain hates sensory and social deprivation. When deprived long enough, it sometimes starts generating experiences on its own. Researchers have documented isolated individuals hearing voices that aren't there, seeing people who don't exist, feeling touches from invisible hands. Why? Because the brain evolved to expect social input. When none arrives, it may begin creating substitutes. In a strange way, the brain would rather invent companionship than accept complete social emptiness. This is why some isolated explorers, prisoners, and castaways reported conversations with imaginary companions, not because they were weak, not because they were irrational, but because their brains were desperately trying to preserve sanity. Here's where things become truly disturbing. The brain hates sensory and social deprivation. When deprived long enough, it sometimes starts generating experiences on its own. Researchers have documented isolated individuals hearing voices that aren't there, seeing people who don't exist, feeling touches from invisible hands. Why? Because the brain evolved to expect social input. When none arrives, it may begin creating substitutes. In a strange way, the brain would rather invent companionship than accept complete social emptiness. This is why some isolated explorers, prisoners, and castaways reported conversations with imaginary companions, not because they were weak, not because they were irrational, but because their brains were desperately trying to preserve sanity. Isolation doesn't only affect emotions, it can affect identity itself. Who are you? It sounds like a simple question, but much of your identity is built through interactions with others. Friends remind you who you've been, family reflects parts of your personality, society constantly reinforces your sense of self. Remove all those reflections, and identity can begin feeling unstable. Some isolated individuals describe feeling disconnected from themselves, as though they are watching life happen from a distance. Others report losing motivation entirely, because motivation itself often comes from connection, goals, relationships, shared experiences. Without those things, life can begin feeling strangely unreal. Perhaps the greatest misconception about loneliness is believing it's merely an emotional problem. Science suggests something much deeper. Human connection is a biological necessity. Just as your body requires food, your mind requires other minds. Every conversation, every smile, every shared moment, they help stabilize the machinery inside your brain. And maybe that's why complete isolation feels so unnatural, because somewhere deep inside, your brain still remembers an ancient truth. For hundreds of thousands of years, survival depended on belonging, being seen, being heard, being connected. So if one day you found yourself completely alone, your greatest enemy wouldn't be silence, it wouldn't be boredom, it wouldn't even be fear. Your greatest challenge would be protecting the very thing that makes you human, your mind. Because the brain can survive without many things, but one thing it was never designed to survive without, was other people. The human mind is powerful, but it was never meant to echo only itself.